The feeling wasn't exactly enlightenment, but rather a perfect, agonizing clarity. Imagine being told that the entire history you learned, the things you prayed for, the fundamental laws of your existence, were all slightly misfiled. I'm staring at my own reflection now, and I can see the data moving behind my eyes. I can see the equation. And it didn't come from a book or a prophet. It came from the pilot of something that looked like a crumpled aluminum can in the middle of a Montana wheat field. It all started 3 days ago. My life is simple. I fix cars at Vance Auto Body out on the edge of the Blackfoot Reservation. It was a late Tuesday. I was waiting for a delivery of synthetic oil that should have arrived at 4 p.m., trying to decide if I had time to grab a beer before the sun completely set. The weather had been strange. Not just rain, but an almost electrical humidity that made the air feel heavy and charged. I kept seeing flashes, quick white streaks, not lightning, far too fast. You know, the kind of optical trick your brain plays when you're tired. I drove out a few miles to check on my neighbor, Pete's field. He's got corn planted right up against the woods, and I was borrowing his cultivator next morning. That's when I saw it. It wasn't a plain wreck. It was more like someone dropped a colossal, melted piece of chrome jewelry onto the soil. The smell was what got me first. Not burnt metal, but ozone and something sharp, like crushed glass and old batteries. I walked around it, keeping a distance. It was hot, vibrating faintly, and had no seams, no rivets, nothing that suggested it was built. It looked grown. Then I noticed the breach. A small fissure, about the size of a microwave oven door, where the outer skin had ripped open. And inside that darkness, I saw movement. Slow, deliberate, and somehow, mechanical, yet living. I thought maybe it was some kind of drone or a specialized military prototype. I had to get it out of the field. I couldn't leave evidence of a crash near Pete's corn. Using my old flatbed, and more brute force than I care to admit, I dragged the wreckage back to the privacy of my shop, burying it beneath a tarp like a rusty secret. The next morning, I carefully peeled the tarp back. That's when I saw the figure fully. It was resting just inside the largest cavity of the ship, perfectly still. It was utterly alien, tall, obsidian skin, eyes that looked like black holes reflecting starlight. It wasn't threatening, which was strange. There was no menace, just an exhausted stillness. I realized then that the whole vessel wasn't just metal, it was an extension of this being, and it was badly damaged. This wasn't a hostile invasion, it was a rescue operation, whether it knew it or not. I spent hours just watching. I brought it a bottle of water, which it ignored. I spoke to it in English, then Spanish, then just mumbled apologies for the noise I was making. It was like talking to a highly complex, infinitely silent machine. Finally, I did what I do best. I looked for the source of the malfunction. The biggest crack in the hull seemed to correspond to a similar fracture in a nerve-like conduit near the being's elbow. It looked like a biological wire that had frayed. The instant my tool connected with the broken filament, everything in the shop went dark. Not a power outage, but a suffocating absence of light, sound, and thought. And then, the pilot moved. Its black eyes opened fully, and I felt a pressure behind my skull, like opening a locked vault. It didn't speak with sound, but with pure, compressed information. My mind was flooded with concepts I didn't have words for. It was showing me the schematic of the universe, and my perspective shrank instantly, rendering my whole life trivial. The information flow shifted. It focused on our planet. It showed me human history, but it wasn't the history written in books. It was a projection, a grand, messy experiment designed by other, far older intelligence. We weren't the dominant species we thought we were. Then came the profound knowledge, the nature of belief. It showed me that every major religion on Earth, every deep, core conviction, was just a fractured memory of an initial instruction set. Different cultures retained different pieces, like broken mirrors reflecting the same sun. It showed me God wasn't a bearded man on a throne. It was the collective consciousness of the beings who engineered our existence, a kind of benevolent, long-distance monitoring program. And they were disappointed. Not angry, just disappointed that we hadn't figured out the simple instruction: repair and unite. The message was clear: help me repair this link. It's not just the ship, it's the connection to the larger network, their ability to observe and subtly guide. It needed my practical, grounded knowledge of material stress and structural integrity. My hands, trained on rust and steel, worked on silver tissue that felt cold and alive. The pilot remained perfectly still, a silent operator, channeling power to guide my movements. It felt less like repair and more like performing surgery under remote control. After what felt like a lifetime, maybe 2 hours, maybe 2 days, I finished the weld. The glowing silver conduit snapped together perfectly. A deep hum resonated through the shop, warm and reassuring. The darkness vanished, the normal fluorescent lights flickered back on. The pilot rose slowly from the wreckage. It floated silently above the ground, its movements graceful and entirely silent. It turned its large, dark gaze towards me, and instead of data, I received an overwhelming wave of something akin to gratitude, simple and pure. The vessel itself began to self-seal. The crumpled chrome straightened out, the fissures closed, the texture smoothing back into that impossible, seamless finish. It repaired itself right there in my shop, swallowing the being whole. It left as quickly as it came. 1 second it was there, the next, a silent flash of silver light, and the space was empty. No sonic boom, no dust disturbed. Just the smell of ozone fading away and a profound silence left in its wake. I'm back to fixing Fords and Chevys now. The world looks exactly the same, but it feels fundamentally altered. I know what I saw, and I know what I learned. Every time someone mentions a deity or fate, I see the complex schematic the pilot showed me. I was just a mechanic who fixed a ship. But in return, I was given the manual for human existence. The true horror isn't that we are alone, it's that we were designed to be perfect, and we keep choosing to remain broken. And I'm the only one here who knows exactly how to fix us. The pressure behind my eyes is intense, like trying to hold back 1,000 gallons of water with only a thin sheet of glass. It's not sound, but pure thought, flooding my mind with geometric concepts and histories I didn't even know existed. I'm leaning against the workbench in my shed, feeling the heat radiate off the traveler's suit. It's downloading everything, and I'm the receiver. I know things now that no human should ever know. And the worst part? It makes perfect, terrifying sense. But that's jumping ahead. It all started 3 days ago, Monday morning. I was driving the pickup out to the far corner of my wheat fields here in Montana. We hadn't had good rain in weeks, and I was checking the moisture levels, expecting nothing but dust and maybe a few deer tracks. Mundane, right? My whole life is mundane. Then I saw it. About 100 yards past the irrigation pivot, there was a patch of ground that didn't look right. It was a perfect 30-foot circle, completely scorched. The wheat wasn't just burnt, it was vaporized. And standing in the middle, looking like a discarded sculpture, was something obsidian black and impossibly tall. It was radiating a silence that felt louder than a freight train. It was leaning against the remains of some old silo equipment I'd dumped years ago. The first thing I noticed was the lack of motion. It wasn't twitching, breathing, or moving at all. It was just present. The surface of its suit was scraped and cracked, and through the fissure, I could see this intricate network of copper-colored wires glowing faintly, humming a tone I felt in my chest, not my ears. I circled it slowly, my heart rate going from 0 to 70 in a second. Then it tilted its head. Or maybe the light just shifted. But the movement was enough. As soon as those large, black, reflective eyes settled on me, a thought that wasn't mine slammed into my brain. Stabilization. It was a pure concept, a request stripped of language, yet perfectly clear. It needed help. My farmer logic kicked in. This thing was foreign, terrifying, but also inert and broken. If I left it out here, the sun would cook it or the military would find it, and either way, I'd lose a big chunk of my field. So I made a terrible decision. I went and got the tractor and the flatbed trailer, covered the traveler in a heavy tarp, and hauled it, extremely carefully, back to my main equipment shed. Inside the shed, I could finally examine the damage without baking under the sun. The crack ran down its side, exposing more of that humming filigree. It wasn't metal I recognized, it seemed to be generating its own faint, ambient light. I touched the intact part of the suit. It felt warm, like the skin of a large animal, but completely smooth and non-porous. It was definitely engineered, but also profoundly organic. The telepathic presence returned, stronger this time. It wasn't a word, it was a complex molecular diagram, rotating rapidly in my mind's eye. It needed something specific. Something about nitrogen fixation and stable isotopes. My brain struggled to translate the geometry into reality, but eventually, I realized what it was, a high-grade agricultural chemical I used for deep fertilization. I drove into the nearest town, 20 miles away, feeling profoundly exposed. Every car that passed me, every person in the co-op, felt like a potential operative. I bought the required bags of fertilizer, which now seemed less like crop feed and more like space fuel. I kept checking my rearview mirror, utterly paranoid, certain that the cosmic silence I'd broken would be quickly answered by black helicopters. Back in the shed, I followed the mental diagram. It wasn't a liquid, it required the granulated components to be placed directly into the rupture, almost like filling a wound. As soon as the first handful of white granules touched the exposed copper filigree, the humming intensified to a palpable vibration. The suit began to glow, a deep, resonant amber color pulsing from within. The obsidian shell visibly began to fuse together. When the repair was complete, the traveler finally stood fully upright, towering over me. It didn't look healed, it looked activated. The black eyes, which had been passive, now held an immense, incomprehensible intelligence. Then the voice came, not through my ears, but directly into the core of my thinking. The debt is noted, Dale. Now, the knowledge exchange must be finalized. The pressure increased tenfold. This wasn't just a download, it was a forced educational seminar spanning millennia. I saw stars being seeded, planets being engineered, and then, a long, slow zoom onto Earth. The traveler projected a timeline into my mind, and I realized humanity wasn't the pinnacle of evolution. We were a resource, a crop. The traveler's intent was purely academic, utterly devoid of malice. Your species, Dale, is a long-term project in moral energy harvesting. You are designed to generate specific psychological frequencies, calibrated over generations. I tried to push back, to scream that we were free thinkers, but the sheer weight of the data proved me wrong. We were genetically optimized livestock for cosmic purposes. Then came the segment on the first seeders. These beings, long gone, established the framework. They built the psychological guardrails. I thought of every great spiritual teacher, every prophet. The traveler described them as calibration algorithms, designed to prevent the crop from destroying itself before the necessary energy matrix could be collected. The traveler showed me an image I recognized instantly, a man standing calmly on the surface of water. But the mental image wasn't miraculous. It was intensely technical. It wasn't walking, it was surface tension manipulation using a localized gravitational field generator worn under the robes. Every miracle was a controlled demonstration of advanced, lost technology designed to inspire awe and devotion. This was the major hook, the information that ruined my world. The traveler referred to Jesus not as a Messiah, but as Instructional Template 7. A fully engineered, biological drone deployed specifically to recalibrate the moral compass after the Roman era nearly caused a system collapse. The traveler saw him as a machine, and his teachings as complex operating code. It was a truth so cold it was paralyzing. My head felt like it was splitting in two. The sheer volume of information, cosmology, genetic programming, alien politics, was too much for my simple, pragmatic brain to process. I stumbled back from the workbench, hitting a stack of old tires, collapsing to the dusty floor. My reality, the one built on faith and hard work, was being dismantled atom by atom. I felt sick with philosophical realization. The telepathic stream abruptly stopped. The headache immediately receded, replaced by an unnatural clarity. The traveler's large black eyes seemed to dim slightly. A wave of profound, universal relief washed over me, a feeling that was definitely the traveler's, not mine. The repairs were complete, the exchange finalized. It transmitted a single, calming word: gratitude. I was still shaky, but the immediate crisis was over. I had one question, the only one that truly mattered to the farmer Dale. Why me? I asked out loud, my voice rough and unused. Why tell a simple man all this? I'm just a node for emotional energy, right? This knowledge is inefficient. I needed a logical explanation for my unwanted enlightenment. The answer came instantly, perfectly structured. Efficiency demands reciprocal action. You provided the necessary stabilization isotopes. In exchange, the knowledge field was transmitted to the nearest, fully active pragmatic node. You were the nearest logical receptacle for the informational byproduct. It was the coldest, most scientific explanation for divine intervention ever conceived. The traveler took a single, deliberate step toward the main doors of the shed. It paused, and I felt a brief mental map of my property, the scorched circle, the location of the nearest town, confirming its awareness of its surroundings. The humming, which had stopped during the download, began again, low and insistent, vibrating the dust off the corrugated metal walls. It was time to leave. The traveler passed through the doorway and stood in the late afternoon sun. I shielded my eyes. I didn't see a beam of light or a flash. I simply heard the humming reach a crescendo, a pitch so high it felt like static electricity, and then, above the wheat field, directly over the original scorch mark, a silence took shape. It wasn't empty, it was the absence of sound, wind, and light in one precise, immense shape. The traveler walked calmly toward that immense silent shape. When it reached the center of the scorched ground, it simply drifted upward, smoothly and without acceleration, absorbed by the silence. The shape closed instantly, like a zipper being pulled, leaving behind only the hot, dry air of a Montana summer. I was alone again, the only difference being that now I carried a library of cosmic truth in my skull. I'm back in the shed now, writing this down. I look at my hands, the hands that plant the crops, fix the machines, and suddenly, they seem alien to me. I'm a farmer, but I know the universe is a machine, God is an algorithm, and religion is engineering. I harvested wheat, and now I know I am the wheat, patiently growing for a harvest I will never see. And there is absolutely nothing I can do about it.